Hello, everybody. It's Kevin from Storytellers Union, and we are getting ready to count down the top 15 albums of 2025. This is a third in a three-part series. So if you did not see our first two videos, be sure you go and check out as we count down albums 30 through 16, as well as looking at the best box sets, reissues, and honorable mentions of the year. One of the best years ever for box sets, so you'll definitely want to make sure you check that out as well. If you like what we're doing here, give us a like, a comment, subscribe if you would like. We would appreciate that very much. Also, Storytellers Union, we are a band. We put out our own album this year, Leave Your Darlings. It is available on our Bandcamp page. If you are so inclined, we would very much like it if you would check that out as well. We would appreciate it. But you click this video to hear about the best albums of the year. So let's get right to it, starting with number 15. Kathleen Edwards and Billionaire. Kathleen came onto the scene out of Canada as a singer-songwriter a couple of decades ago at this point, and her output is not to the level that it was then. It's way more infrequent. Billionaire is her first album in 5 years. The gap before that album was even longer. So when we do get to hear from Kathleen Edwards, we should very much cherish that. When she first arrived, as I said, a few decades ago, I felt it was like a sort of a Canadian sister to the sound of like Lucinda Williams, and very much she has continued in that vein of music and as well as her lyrics. So if you enjoyed that, I believe that you should check out Billionaire. This was produced by Jason Isbell, and therefore it does tend to be a little more rocking than maybe some of her other work, which that added heft is due to a lot of the musicians on the album, which are members, some of Jason Isbell's 400 unit. He didn't use the 400 unit on his album that came out in 2025. He went solo with that, but they do appear here backing Kathleen Edwards on a strong set of songs that kicks off the bottom half here of my best of list at number 15. Moving on to number 14, Tunde Adebimpe from TV on the Radio. If you watched the prior video that we had when we counted down albums 30 through 16, there was a through line that I began to mention as far as a trend that emerged when I put this list together, that of front people going solo and producing great albums. Tunde's situation is a little different with the Black Bolts. Yes, he is the leader of TV on the Radio, but TV on the Radio does not put out studio albums anymore. They only recently started touring occasionally, and that is without the full membership of the band. Tunde, in the intervening years from the heydays of TV on the Radio in the early aughts, has primarily been known as an actor. So to see him return to recorded work with music was exciting. Even more exciting was getting to live in that world of that TV on the Radio sound again, because even though this is a solo record, it has all the hallmarks of the alternative rock that TV on the Radio branded in the early part of this millennium, and that is guitar rock mixed with noise and electronic sounds. And that stew is very much present on the Black Bolts. In fact, if you just listen to the Sonics, you would think it could be a TV on the Radio album. Lyrically, however, it is definitely a solo record in that it is extremely personal. For Tunde, it is an album that deals with grief. Primarily, that was inspired by the loss that Tunde experienced of his sister. It is not, though, a bleak album. In many ways, though it was born in grief, it is a hopeful record that looks to find the light within that darkness, and therefore could be a salve to others who may be experiencing something similar. You will want to hear Tunde and the Black Bolts, one of the best records of 2025. A welcome return. Moving on to number 13, Josh Ritter, I Believe in You, My Honeydew. Josh Ritter is someone who many years ago produced my album of the year. And typically, when he releases something, it fares very well on my list because he is just a personal favorite, a underrated songwriter that I think that more people should hear about. Spectral Lines was his last record, and that was one that probably was my least favorite Josh record to date. It had some good songs. It was more experimental in nature that emphasized music over lyrics, which are really his strong points. So it could meander. Again, it was not a bad listen, but it was not necessarily true to the form that most people have expected with the consistency of what Josh Ritter has produced over the course of his career. You get a lot of variety and a return to form here on I Believe in You, My Honeydew. The musical variety is everything from the riff rock that you would experience in kudzu vines to a song that builds throughout until it goes from a whisper almost to a scream in the song Wild Ways. To me, though, the highlight of this record and the way that it shows its return to form is that the great music that is throughout is stripped back, and there is a song on there called "Truth Is a Dimension, Both Invisible and Binding." And if that title it makes you want to hear the song, that is exactly the point in that that type of evocative language is present throughout the entirety of this number. It is again stripped back, that song particularly stripped back and rather acoustic, and is just a masterclass in storytelling and a masterclass in what it is that Josh Ritter does, as well as anyone of his generation. And that is very much this song, but honestly, it is experienced throughout the entirety of the record that it is a return to that form. Also, moving on to number 12, it's hard to say that this one is a return to form because Amanda Shires never lost it. I thought her last record was the best of her solo career, and I believe that this one is almost as good. Nobody's Girl. I think the thing that most people will probably think of when they hear about Amanda Shires putting out a new album is her divorce, her high profile divorce from fellow musician Jason Isbell. She was a member of his 400 unit band, had supported him as a backing musician for years. And if you saw the first part of the top 30, you will see that her ex had an album out this year that made my best of albums list. And yes, I do have her higher. Now, I know that you don't often get this opportunity. So, voyeuristically, as listeners, yes, you can hear both sides of the story. If you've already heard the he said, you need to hear the she said. And I don't like necessarily putting the two in competition to say one beat the other, because I do believe they are both of artistic merit and both deserve to be heard. I probably listen to hers more because I do like Jason with the 400 unit. He produced an amazing record, but I think that I just tended to like hers a tad bit better, but would highly recommend both. They definitely dealt with the divorce and how they would present it to the world on album in very different ways. Jason talked a bit about his new relationship and talked a little obliquely about his prior relationship with Amanda. Amanda takes a way more direct approach. Not that it isn't as poetic, because there are moments of that that Jason had, but that Amanda also shares. But what is unique to hers is that she allows herself not just to feel the emotions of the breakup and describing how it was. She allows herself to feel angry. She allows herself to reclaim her story, and rather than the obliqueness that I mentioned that maybe Jason approached his work, She gets very direct with details. In fact, there is a song literally called The Details that is almost uncomfortable to listen to, in how, if you know anything about the couple and the relationship at all, you will very much know the songs she's referencing, the moments she's referencing. And it was in many ways a very brave record, and I would like to give some credit to her friends, particularly Shooter Jennings, son of the legendary Waylon Jennings, who reportedly is the one who told her she would have to put this out. Originally, Amanda did these songs almost as just catharsis to make herself feel better and did not think she would actually release them. And Shooter was the one who wisely told her that this is way too good to leave up on any shelf and people need to hear this. And we are all the better for the fact that she listened to him. Number 12, Amanda Shires, Nobody's Girl. Number 11, James McMurtry, The Black Dog and The Wandering Boy. James has made my list before. His last album was a top tenner for me. This one came very, very close. He is one of our best narrative songwriters. He is very good at taking the personal and making it feel universal. He does that here. I think that this album is more rock than it is maybe what we've had from him at certain times in his career, where it's a little more mellow, but it's certainly not short on the details in the songwriting. And James McMurtry does not tend to put out any bad records. This, I think, is on the higher end of his output, and I would highly recommend it for Americana fans, rock fans, folk fans, any fans of lyrics in general. Worth your listen. We are now moving into the top 10, and the first album in my top 10 of 2025 is from Perfume Genius. The album is Glory. You're really getting two albums in one with Glory, in that the first half of the record is completely different sonically than the back half of the record. Many times that sounds as if it would lead to something that is disjointed, but very much not the case here. I would say of all of the albums on my list, if you were going to be listening to one on headphones, it is this one, because the amount of sonic details you're going to pick up by a very close listen is remarkable. The first half is very much a guitar-based record. You would think that it was Nani's alternative 120 minutes era, some Siamese Dream sort of Smashing Pumpkins guitar sounds to the first half. And then the album begins to expand and mellow out in its back half until you get these very stripped back piano-based pieces that are full of orchestral flourishes and whispers. And it is weird how it is done in such a journey that it doesn't feel jarring at all, that these two different halves, these two different sides of Perfume Genius's personality manage to cohese into something that is just a beautiful piece of work. Perfume Genius and Glory. Number 9 on my list, as we count down to the top album of the year, is Sam Fender, People Watching. Sam first broke on the scene and had a hard time, despite all the praise, had a hard time coming out of the shadow of Bruce Springsteen. He was kind of dogged by the fact of, oh, he's the next Bruce Springsteen. This is kind of something he brought on himself, because he was not shy about professing his love of the boss. And it's probably worth noting that Bruce was once considered the next Dylan, and then Bruce's love of Dylan could not be denied, but he had to become his own man. And Sam has worked ever since that debut to try to become his own man. Yes, they do share some similarities in the fact that the choruses tend to be bombastic and anthemic, and it's obvious that the influence is there. But Sam is more than just a copy of anyone, and he has spent time since that debut fleshing out his sound. This time around, he brings on, as a producer, the leader of the War on Drugs, Adam Grandusile, excuse me. But Adam honestly is also known as a Springsteen acolyte, so I don't know that it's going to help Sam a whole lot in that regard. But War on Drugs puts a different twist on things, and the production here by Adam puts a different twist on Sam Fender's sound. There's times that it's very much sounds like a War on Drugs album with a British accent, um, meaning it's psychedelic and hazy, and that the songs build almost into, almost indecipherably. It's not like it's a loud, soft, dynamic. It is more of a, before you know it, something has gone from a gentle strum to a gigantic production piece, and you didn't realize how we got there. That is sort of a trademark of War on Drugs, unique to them. Adam does bring that to this work by Sam Fender. But the reason it's so winning here is that Sam, despite his influences that he wears on his sleeve, is very much his own man. And his very distinct British take is not one that you're going to mistake for Bruce or Adam, and that it deals very specifically with the time and place that Sam comes from. And therefore, I think that this is his best work yet, and the best reason to keep an eye on Sam Fender moving forward as he evolves and continues to become his own man and one of our better young songwriters, giving hope for guitar rock in the future, especially considering that most of his influences are at least 2 to 3 times his age. We need more young people making this style of music, and he does it expertly here. Number 8, The Mountain Goats, Across the Fire from Peter Balkin. Through This Fire from across from Peter Balkin. That I know is a mouthful, obviously, and it's funny considering that this album began as a title and not songs or a concept. That title came to the Mountain Goats leader, John Darnielle, in a dream. And because John has never met a challenge he is not willing to accept, he thought of that dream as, I wonder what that was about, what those songs would be about, what that story needs to be about, and then set forth on producing an entire record that would live up to the title from his dream. That was all the information he had from the dream, and then he went forth to see what he could build from that. What he built was a Broadway musical, and it's remarkable in so many ways that the man that first became famous by doing lo-fi recordings on a boombox by himself has become such a master of the musical form that his full band work now can be so ornamental and orchestrated and just big when he wants it to be. He shows a command of musicality that you never would have guessed from those scratchy home recordings of those many decades ago. So if you like the full lush sound that the Mountain Goats have employed on certain records, you're certainly going to love Through This Fire across from Peter Balkin, because it is the best of those that he has ever done as far as the fullness. When I say Broadway musical, not literally on Broadway yet, but Lin-Manuel Miranda is on here. He's a personal friend, so you can't get more bona fide to the musical form than that. There's even an overture on here, which is the first instrumental in the long storied career of the Mountain Goats. As far as the story itself, it is about 3 men, 3 characters who survive a shipwreck on a deserted island, find themselves there with the rest of their crew having demised at sea. These 3 find themselves alive, at least for a while, on the deserted island. I will not say or spoil too much more than that. I will say that these songs will stand on their own if you don't get into the concept, or if you listen to things on shuffle or out of order. It's not as if you have to hear everything in order to enjoy the record. Outside of the overture, all of these songs would work on their own. And even though John is calling this a a first for the Mountain Goats in attempting a musical. It's certainly not the very first time that John has tackled a single subject or a concept album. I mean, Sunset Tree, Jenny from Thebes, Goths, there's any number of albums you can point to. It's very often that he goes hard on a singular subject. Beat the Champ was about pro wrestling. He has an album about the Bible. He has an album about role playing and Dungeons and Dragons. There's no topic of curiosity that John has not been willing to tackle on. So it still is a Mountain Goats record. So don't feel like if you do not care for musicals that this may not be one for you. If you enjoy good songwriting and have enjoyed the Mountain Goats in the past, never fear, do not be intimidated by the idea of a musical. It is a great Mountain Goats record. Number 7, we are hitting yet another solo artist coming out of a band, and that is Craig Finn, who is the leader of the Hold Steady. Here we have the album Always Been. It is his best solo work because I think it finds that middle ground between what he does best with the Hold Steady and what he has also shown throughout his solo work, which has tended to be quieter. Obviously, the Hold Steady had come out of a punk rock, garage rock movement. And so even though Craig Finn, who is almost, is the alternative music version of rappers when it comes to the amount of words that he can cram into a line. No one on this side of outside of rap or hip hop is as good at spitting bars, quite frankly, as Craig Finn. And so he has always been unusual when it comes to the way that he approaches his singing and his lyrics. Now, when he does this with the Hold Steady, obviously you are backed by loud guitars, pounding drums, and you can read along if you're curious in the story, but the lyrics and the singing are just part of the overall musical sound, and they only occasionally rise from the din. His solo records have stripped away that sound, the big sound, so that you can concentrate on the stories that he has always told, but are more apparent in the solo setting. Again, when I said this is the middle ground, I think it has the most musicality of any of his solo records, and therefore it has a little more beginning to end listenability and repeatability. So the songwriting is still on point for certain, and therefore I think that it is the perfect distillation of what Craig brings to the table and his best solo record to date. Which brings me to my biggest, I would say, find of the year when it comes to bands. This is a band with whom I was not overly familiar and prior to this record, and that is the band Geese and their album Getting Killed. I had seen Geese on a couple of occasions live and had always walked away thinking that the man had a good voice, that they were pleasant enough, but for some reason they never connected with me in a way that I had gone out and sought more of their work. I saw them just this past year open for Vampire Weekend and thought, oh, that was good, and then got blown away by Vampire Weekend and kind of forgot all about it. So when I began seeing best of list and reading reviews and seeing that this was topping so many folks' lists, I thought, what am I missing out on? And as it turned out, I was missing out on quite a bit. This has definitely Getting Killed is earning all the praise that it is receiving. The best way I could describe it is if Radiohead's Kid A had a baby with the Strokes. Is this it? And that is about a high praise as I could give to an alternative rock record, especially in 2025 when people are not making alternative rock records, indie rock records, taking chances. This is a weird record that careens about in its sound and thrills at every turn. There is not a dull moment on this record, and it is definitely something that is missing a lot in the current landscape of music. So if you've missed it as I have, you'll want to know that there's still vital rock and roll being made out there by newer bands, and that is Geese. Moving into my top five, this is not a newer band, but it is a band who feel rejuvenated, and that is Kentucky's own My Morning Jacket and their album Is. They have been at this game for a long time now, and while they have yet to make a bad album, there has not been anything in the recent vintage of My Morning Jacket that would stand alongside of what most diehards would consider their early run of classic albums. That is until Is, the current album that came out here in 2025. Have it right here. I snagged the rainbow splatter if that's showing up. It is, I think, the greatest work since their heyday. I will give credit to the producer, Brendan O'Brien, known for his work with Pearl Jam and Bruce Springsteen. I think that he was able to get the band to focus and pare down because it's not a terribly long record, but by keeping them on task, he sort of distilled their sound back to what it was that they had been most known for, and that is catchy choruses, ripping guitars, a very smart sequencing of these tracks to make the different styles flow well one into another. It is the best album My Morning Jacket has made since their masterpiece of Z, and to even be in that mentioned within those that rarefied air, I think is a feat that hopefully they will try to repeat. Number 4, Hayley Williams, Ego Death at a Bachelorette Party. So here's my Hayley Williams story. I was not really a fan of Paramore. In fact, I didn't dislike them. They came about in the time when I dismissed out of hand, without really much, knowledge on the subject, anything that was on pop radio. So I think I just didn't pay attention at the time, assuming that this was music that was not being made for me and that I would therefore not enjoy it. Obviously, that is not a smart way to look at music. You should always give something a listen before you judge it. I just judged it out of hand as this is going to be pop rock from the radio style of pop rock at the time that just was not appealing to me. Fast forward 20 years, and I'm at Bonnaroo a few years back waiting on Foo Fighters to take the stage, and Paramore just happened to be the band that was going to be on before them. What I experienced, I enjoyed more than I enjoyed Foo Fighters. Like, I was blown away by not just the Paramore catalog, but in particular, Hayley herself, just her energy, her stage presence, just the fact that this is, I'm looking at a rock star in an era that does not seem to have as many rock stars anymore. And this lady's up there just absolutely killing it. I walked away a fan, went back and realized what I had missed out on. And then comes this record. She drops a bunch of tracks earlier this year on the internet and begins to ask fans what order they should be in, getting feedback, and then forms those songs, adding one more into a 17 track. It's a very long mission statement, really, of independence. It does not necessarily sound like the work she would do in Paramore. I honestly think this is her best work, either in or out of the band. Again, from just my brief amount of fandom and what I have gotten into with her over the last few years, I do feel that she sounds liberated, not just from Paramore the band, but this album is the first that she has had since breaking free of a very, very prohibitive contract that she had signed as a teenager with a record company, and therefore all of her work up to this point has had some other hands involved in it. And I think here she wanted to show what she is capable of when she is completely unchained, and therefore a lot of the songs deal with liberation, deal with her record contract situation, deal with her band dynamics and drama, and just deals with things like fame and middle age and loss and grief that she had suffered on a personal level in her own family. And more than all of that, you tie it together, and this is just the sound, both musically and lyrically, of a young person reclaiming their self-identity, which was very important to her. And the fact that she did it over pop rock and indie pop, and just a melange of really intriguing sounds. It is a very catchy record. It is a very deep record. It is a fantastic record that, despite its length, is worth every minute. And the same can be said for this next record, which has a very similar length, but a very different approach. So Ryan Davis and the Roadhouse Band, their album New Threats from the Soul is only 7 songs long. And it is also almost an hour long. So these songs stretch and stretch, but there is never a point where you think, man, I wish this song would end, or why are they going on so long? It's, why does this song have to end? Because in the write-up that I did for this one, I said that lyrically, it was as if this album was comprised of nesting dolls. You will pull one lyric apart that just hits you hard, and as soon as you pay attention to that on a second listening, you're going to realize contained within or adjacent on either side is another lyric that didn't hit you first time around that is equally as amazing. And I don't mean to be trite when I say words like amazing and blown away. It's just that because I did not know Ryan Davis previously, this one did blindside me in that I found it remarkable, the lyrics contained within this album. I think that lyrically, this is probably the most astonishing album of 2025. And that is from someone who obviously fashions himself as wanting to be a songwriter, someone who has writers that are no less than like Craig Finn or John Darnielle, masters of the form, also in my top 10. And yet Ryan Davis comes along and is higher on my list. And actually, there's just no comparison to anything else on this list when it comes to the astonishing nature of the lyrics. Pulling out a few of my favorites, I jotted down here. I can't remember the last time the good times got so bad. Everything's a secret until somebody knows. I left my wallet in El Segundo. I left my true love in a West Lafayette escape room. And then my favorite, if we put our two heads together on this sad sack of feathers, could we remember what the memory foam forgot? This is just a sampling of, again, what I just have to say is astonishing lyrical work that's done by Ryan Davis, who is from Louisville. So right here in my backyard of Kentucky, had the Ryan Davis and the Roadhouse Band that I did not know about after their first album. I went back and listened to it. It's also worth recommending. But this new album, New Threats from the Soul, could easily be my album of the year. It became very hard with these top 3 as to how I wanted to order them. I will say that if you're not familiar yet with Ryan Davis as far as sound, if you're at all familiar with Silver Jews or Purple Mountains, that band, both those bands share the leader in David Berman. It is very obvious that Ryan Davis is influenced by David Berman, not a copy, but just an influence. But that is probably the closest lyrically and sound-wise with the singing that I could possibly make. But the music manages to offer enough surprise and variety that the lengthy lyrics and the lengthy songs to make 7 stretch out for nearly an hour, it never feels long at all. In fact, as soon as it ends, you will want to play it again in order to miss all, or to catch everything that you missed the first go around, because you will miss a lot in an album this lyrically dense and just impressive. And that is Ryan Davis and the Roadhouse Band, New Threats from the Soul. Highly recommended. Which brings me to number 2. We're now on the doorstep of the best album of the year. As I mentioned with the Ryan Davis record, which very, very easily could have been my album of the year, this also could have been my album of the year, and that is Jeff Tweedy's Twilight Override. Jeff Tweedy is the leader of Wilco. So again, as I mentioned, whether it's Haley Williams from Paramore or Rhett Miller from the old 97s or Craig Finn from the Hold Steady, like this, my list is completely full of front people going solo. And Jeff Tweedy has gone solo before, but never quite like this. He has always been a prolific writer. Being There, which is only the second record that Wilco had, who follows up their debut with a double album. Being There was a double album. When Jeff goes solo for the first time, his very first solo album, Suki Ray, was a double album. Wilco's Cruel Country, which I think is the best album of the modern Wilco era, that was my favorite album of 2022. It was a double album. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there's plenty of precedent here that shows that Jeff Tweedy is willing to take his time. He is not in a rush and is very much going to challenge the notion that the modern listener has a very short attention span. All of that said, I think even the most diehard Wilco and Jeff Tweedy fans probably were taken aback when they heard that the album Twilight Override was not a double, but a rarity in a triple album. We're talking 30 songs, nearly 2 hours of music. And I know that's probably a lot that will challenge people's listening abilities, but take that challenge. Don't be afraid. Even if you have to listen in segments, do so. This is by far the best solo record of Jeff Tweedy's career and one of the best albums of his career in general. It is beginning to end. There is not a single one of these 30 songs, I would say, could be stricken from this record that would make the record any better. They all feel as if they earn their place. Yes, it may challenge short attention spans, but take that challenge. It's his best solo record by some distance. Some of these could easily have been Wilco songs, but just the fact that he is delivering this with a band of very young people, including his 2 sons, I think gives it a energy and vitality that does make it a little bit different, and in many ways will harken back to some of the earlier Wilco records that fans love and hold so dear. So it comes across to me as if this is definitely an indie Americana, like magnum opus. This is a very definitive statement when you put out an album that is 3 records long and 30 songs in length. You are making a statement, and I think that people will look back, even with everything that Jeff Tweedy has done and all the masterpieces that are given to Wilco, this will be the solo masterpiece and will be mentioned in the same breath as those fantastic records. That's how strong throughout the entirety of Twilight Override is. Which brings us to my favorite, the best album of 2025. In my opinion, we have a Kentucky theme going on here, folks, because you have Ryan Davis and My Morning Jacket in my top 5. I have never had such a Kentucky-centric top 5 before. Number 1 goes to a man from just down the road from me, and that is Tyler Childers and his release, Snipe Hunter. The Louisa native has let his freak flag fly on this one. It is very much a wild country record, and both of a piece with what Tyler has done in the past, as well as its own unique being. Most fans know, if you've been following Tyler for a long time, it's not a clean discography. The world comes to know him in with the album Purgatory, but because of so many self-released records, he had a big following, a local following, and lots of songs that were very well known well before Purgatory. But Purgatory was a perfect country music debut. It's a singer-songwriter of traditional country sound. There's not a thing I would change about Purgatory. The follow-up, Country Squire, was almost as strong. After that, though, I will say that I have enjoyed every one of Tyler's records, but each has come with a bit of a flaw. None of them are fatal flaws, but they each are imperfect records in their own way. Long Violent History, great record, but pretty much an instrumental aside from one song. After that, he did Can I Take My Hounds to Heaven, which was ambitious, and I appreciate ambition. Lots of good songs, but it's basically the same record delivered three different ways, which did grow tiresome. So in some ways, that was too much of a good thing. You just picked your favorite version of the three and did not really need the other two. He followed that up with Rustin' in the Rain, which was the opposite problem of too little of a good thing. That album was beginning to end fantastic, but it was under 28 minutes, around 26, 27 minutes long. So again, great record, just a little on the short side. Here, though, on Snipe Hunter, he just lays it all out there and has produced his best work since that debut of Purgatory. In many ways, a lot of the intervening albums that Tyler has put out has been based on a few new songs, a lot of things from his older repertoire that he had yet to record and put out. And then he could have probably done the rest of his career doing these great live shows with the food stamps on that body of work and would have been fine, considered one of the leaders of the alternative country or traditional neo-country traditional movement. And that would have probably been a cool place to be for him. Instead, he decided to bring in Rick Rubin. And Rick Rubin, as a producer, is usually known for not changing your sound, but managing to get you to go back to the roots of what it is that you do the best and challenging you with every idea. And I believe that whatever idea came to Tyler's mind, Rick in this instance was able to flesh out into something that is a bit of a wonder. It's still authentically rootsy. It's still very much Tyler. There are story songs. There are, songs like Nose to the Grindstone that people will know from Tyler's live shows through the year. So much like some of his prior records, there are a few older classics that fans have been longing to hear on record that have been brought into the studio to great effect. But you also have the humor of things like Biting List or songs about koalas with chlamydia, or there's a lot of Hindu mysticism taken through the Appalachian hollers that come through here. It's like there's no overriding concept, and yet somehow it all holds together in a way that makes it by far, I shouldn't say by far. The top three are pretty close, but by far this is the best Tyler record since his debut, and hopefully points a way forward where he realizes that he's punched his way out of a box as being just a traditional old style Appalachian country singer into something that is a little bit rock and roll, a little bit indie, a little bit all its own thing. And from here, he could really go anywhere that his musical desires would take him, which has to be an exciting place for Tyler to be. Tyler Childers has produced my favorite album of the year, that is Snipe Hunter. And with that, we have reached the end. We have counted down 30 records, as well as a lot of honorable mentions and reissues and box sets. Again, this is the last video of a 3-part series. So if you missed any of the other two, I would highly recommend you go and check those out as well. If you've enjoyed this, please do let us know. Give us a like. Let us know what it is that we got wrong, what I missed, new albums that came out in 2025 that did not make my list. I am always happy to hear what your recommendations are. I hope you would give those to me. I also hope that if you get a moment that you give a chance and a listen to Leave Your Darlings over on our Bandcamp page. More than anything at this point in this time of year, though, as I say goodbye, I would want to wish you and your families a very happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll be talking to you again soon. Thank you, everyone, for watching.